we are the History Boys. I am Christopher Whedon, and you know what, gang? I'm a lazy guy. You know? I eat a lot of food that's not good for me. You know?
No shit.
When I'm making food, the dishes get a lot of grease on them, so I need a detergent that cuts through tough grease, and that's why I always go with the new product line from Skeleton Life Products, where I need a dish soap that cuts through tough grease. 50% less scrub, and it says it on the bottle. There's a whole line. They couldn't be lying. There's a whole line of Skeleton Life products that you guys can make a buttload of money if you're selling them door to door. We got bath and beauty products, all Skeleton Life brand, and if you guys wouldn't mind going door to door selling these things, because I can't get my head above water on this thing. I'm really in the hole deep, and if you fans at home, want to get part of my pyramid scheme, I mean, if you guys want to live that skeleton life, you could really help me out, because I could get my legs broken real soon by Gino. He's not pulling out the knives this time.
He's pulling out the hammers.
Yeah. Oh, the knives are for next time.
Yeah. I'm Tyler Armentrout, and I am living the existence of a cadaver. It's my Chris's catchphrase has become so popular that I feel the need to get in on it in my own way, and so it doesn't quite roll off the tongue like Skeleton Life, but
no. In retrospect, I think I should have just put it on t-shirts instead of making a series of soaps and bath and beauty products. It may have not been the way to go.
It was a weird way to go, and and you didn't market them. You don't have a website.
I met a guy in a bar, and he tried to sell me on the idea, and I came up with Skeleton Life, and he's like, put that on the bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Now your garage is full of stuff.
No,
it's full of stuff.
I'm in way over my head,
You're never going to sell it all.
I'm treading water here. It's a real problem.
And I am Zach Meck. I am just a regular old history boy.
Oh, there you go.
A bit hungover, but isn't that the history boy lifestyle?
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. Living that history boy life.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy. As always, thank you so much for listening. And today, dear listener and fellow history boys, we have something that loosely connects with our last series.
Cool.
Today we are covering Quanah Parker. Does anyone have any idea who that is before we start?
I mean, yeah. He was a Comanche leader, right?
Yes, he was, yes.
You just told us this. I edited the episode. I had 2 chances to learn.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
The first chance that he edited out was way off base.
Yeah.
Way off base.
Well, Quanah Parker was considered the first and last war chief of the Comanches. Now, before we begin, I really do want to say this one has some fucked up shit in it, gang. I'm warning y'all right now.
Sweet.
There are some truly horrific things that are going to happen in this, and I'm not going to dress it up for you.
It's going to be a fun one, guys.
Oh, yeah.
And gals.
Bust out the lube.
It's coming in.
I also want to give a shout out to Portal to Texas History. It's a fantastic thing for researching and all that stuff. Go check it out if you're into that sort of thing. And I also want to talk just real quick about S.C. Gwynn's book, Empire of the Summer Moon, which is a main source for this. All I really want to say is that the details that we're about to discuss are about human evil, right, that exist in every culture. And being warlike can describe an empire, like Rome, the Mongols, and indeed Comancheria, but never does it fully define. I just want you to keep that in mind as we continue. Being warlike isn't all that your society is based off of. So when you go and read that book, don't think that their whole society is based off of war and raiding. That's just a big part of their society, like these others, right?
Right.
If you live in America, maybe colonialism was a part of the brand, and maybe to a degree, colonialist actions and policies are still part of the brand.
Yeah.
But it's not all handguns and hamburgers.
Sometimes it's just hamburgers.
Yeah, exactly. There's more to Rome than just, being at war, right?
Rome isn't just a river in Egypt.
I just want to point that out, okay? In order to understand what's going to happen, you have to understand a little bit about Comanche history real quick. The Comanche, or the Numanu, which in their language, that's what they called themselves, the Numanu. In their language just means people. They are originally an offshoot of the Shoshone in sort of Idaho, Wyoming, sort of that area. And for a long time, they were simple gatherers, simple hunter-gatherers, living off of nuts and stuff, and foraging and that sort of thing. But they broke off from the Shoshone there and moved south. And they moved south with the Spanish horses that were just introduced in the 1600s.
They wanted to get some of that New Mexico sun.
Yes, indeed. Above all the other native bands and tribes of North America, they took to the horses the best and the most. It changed their whole culture, and it changed the whole power dynamic of North America. These Mustang horses that took to North America really well because they were from, used to Spain,
So, what's up with certain groups over time getting really good at horseback and being like, you know what? I'm going to fuck some shit up.
Yeah. It's because they can.
It's easier.
And the thing is if you're the biggest kid on the block, you can do these things, right? Rome did it, right? The Mongols did it. When you're the biggest kid on the block, you do it because you can, right? So, again, that's why they do it all the time, is because they can. There's no one there to stop them, right? Right. It's not that their whole society is based off of it. It's a big part of their society. You know what I mean? It's because they can.
It's like that guy, Brad, from junior high.
Yeah. Right.
I made that up. I didn't have it. Just feels like a bully's name.
Yeah.
Brad. Sorry, Brad's at home. But, you know what you did.
And if you were a Brad that was bullied, we're sorry about Chad.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is in a neighborhood that didn't have a Chad. So the beta becomes the alpha.
There you go. Yeah, they became expert horsemen in the ways of horsemanship and husbandry, breeding them and all that sort of thing. They became every bit as good as a Mongol steppe rider. You know what I mean? They could ride at full gallop and pick a man off the ground and onto their horse. You know what I mean? And they could, they did the thing, the steppe rider thing where you held a bunch of arrows in your firing hand.
Yeah.
And you could shoot a shit ton of them, almost seemingly at once. One after the other.
Shit.
Boom, 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 and they became really good at that. They could also swing underneath their horse's neck, sort of use their horse's neck as a shield and fire arrows that way.
Behind them?
Yeah, swinging underneath and firing it.
So then you gung fu.
Yeah.
Something like that, I guess.
Bofu.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was like a prequel to Equilibrium. Horse kata.
There we go.
There you go. They went from these modest gatherers to the fiercest, most feared fighting force in North America.
Gathering blood and heads.
Yeah. I mentioned the bow, but they also carried a 14-foot lance that they were really proficient with. And they also carried a buffalo hide shield.
Cool.
That smaller calibers of guns even, the bullets would bounce off of.
So they were fucking dragoons, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's
I was going to say
insane.
dragoon. Could they jump up high and do it?
Translator.
Yeah.
Was one of them named Cecil?
Yes.
They were the only native tribe to actually fight mounted. Most of them would dismount and then fight. They were the only ones.
Fight mountains. So you can't win against a mountain.
Yeah, Don Quixote sort of.
Yeah.
No, they were the only ones that did. So they had a strike force or strike range of around 400 miles, which is insane. So they could be on you quick and then gone. You know what I mean? Out of nowhere and then gone, super fast.
It's hella spooky.
Yeah, and no one really knew how to deal with them.
I don't.
The Spanish were fuck, the French were let's not go over there. Yeah,
fuck.
Yeah.
That's a stupid joke.
Yeah, but they were let's not go over there. So there's sort of this blob, right, of Comancheria that's sort of Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, but they went all the way. They didn't really have defined borders, right? This is something that the United States could never really figure out.
They're just like,
how do you live without borders? I don't understand.
They're like, as long as we're in an area where it's a heat but a dry heat, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Just stay down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In lemon, lime, avocado territory.
Yeah. But they established intricate trade networks and stuff with the Comancheros, which are kind of like these roguey, like Mexican traders, where, you know, they traded for guns and all sorts of shit.
Cool.
Their networks were pretty big. And what they didn't trade for, they raided, you know, and that was a big part of their culture too, is raiding, you know, like the Vikings and shit like that, right? They also adopted a lot of things from other bands that they didn't have. Like, for a long time, they wore, like, the buffalo headdress with, like, the horns, you know? Much later, they got, like, the Cherokee, like, feather headdress.
So where were they during the insurrection?
Jesus.
You remember the one dude?
Yeah. Yeah, he was wearing the stupid thing.
Yeah.
Guy has no idea where that's from.
He's going to die in jail. It's fine.
Yeah. He's some fucking white dude wearing a buffalo headdress. Fucking dumbass.
Yeah.
Honestly. Now, they also didn't have any real leaders, right? Their leaders weren't really elected. If you were a guy that wanted to go on, like, you know, a war party and go raiding, you just did it, and you found guys that would go with you, and that sort of made you a war chief, right?
It's like the first MMO.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, well, it's real life.
Yeah, you got you're looking for a group. I'm going on a raid.
Yeah, yeah.
You find some guys that are the same level as you, and you go, you know, you go get some loot.
And if your war chief was killed, they're like, fuck, and they got the fuck out of there, right? And sometimes, you know, a guy would have, like, an act of bravery in that moment, and they'd be like, you're our new war chief, you know?
Cool.
And they had, like, peace chiefs, too, you know? But it was way fluid, super fluid. And, again, like, no one guy could speak for the Comanches, right? Like, each band was even, you know, remote from other ones, you know? And as far as the bands goes, there were the Cotsodica, who were known as the Buffalo Eaters. Cotsodica. There's the Yamparica, the Root Eaters. There was the Paneticas, the Honey Eaters.
They all eat? I guess they all did eat, you know.
Yeah. The Nakoni, the Wanderers. Or those who turn back. It's sort of one of two sort of translations. And there was, who we're going to talk about, the Quahatis, the Antelope Eaters.
We're the Lotus Eaters.
No one, not Europeans, no one could stand against them, could even touch them for like 200 years. You know what I mean? They would actually even call them Comanche moons when like the moon was full, because they had light and they would come and get you, you know, during these Comanche moons, right?
It's like a bat signal.
In a lot of ways, it's
kind of like the laziest bat signal, because like there's no stencil on the inside. It's just the full moon.
Well,
I
that's
can
why
say
you
the
gotta
full
fly
moon's
your,
a Tyler signal.
you gotta fly your bat plane right up to the moon, so it looks like it's
there you
on
go.
Or like a kite
There you go.
with
No,
a
it falls
mean
back.
face
Yeah,
on
it falls back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You all saw the movie.
You cut the balloons. Yeah. These raids and stuff were notoriously brutal, though, complete with rape, scalping people alive, disemboweling, genitalia mutilation, and skewering infants on their lance. Yeah.
Talk about a barbecue.
It was, it's pretty fucked up.
Talk about a stick situation.
Hey.
Bringing it back.
Yeah. The Spanish actually started calling them a variation of what their enemies, the Ute tribe, was actually calling them, which is the Comanche, which meant anyone who wants to fight me all the time.
Oh,
It's the Comanche, right?
you fuck around and find out.
Right.
I just thought that was badass. It basically just means, somebody that wants to fucking kick my
Fight
ass all the time. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it got, filtered through and became Comanche, right? And yeah, it was an empire complete with all of these things, just in a completely different way. There was slavery, there was subjugation within these, and they would do it with other, native bands that bordered them as well. It wasn't just like white people when they came down. They just did to white people what they'd been doing
Yeah.
to all these other, the Apaches and
Did
things
they take
like
white
this.
people as slaves?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
We're going to get to that.
Sweet.
About time.
They were all Irish. We'll never hear the end of it.
Texas Rangers were actually founded to deal with Comanche raids.
Oh, the
and
baseball team.
Comanches. Yeah, right.
I just figured like high kicking, denim wearing, mustachioed fellows.
Well, and the first early Texas Rangers, they weren't paid very well, so most of these guys were in it because they liked killing Indians.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean? They wanted to do it. You know,
Well-
they considered it sport.
I feel like that there's a point of view situation happening here, right? And they're not just people that are like, I'm bloodthirsty, much like the Comanche of the time weren't like, I'm bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
It's what you grow up in and around.
It's
and,
a hard, yeah.
You know, there's you, and also like what you grow up in and around informs all of your opinions, all of your worldview, and there is no counterpoint.
Yep, yep.
You know,
It's a bloodthirsty world begets bloodthirsty people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just how the fucking chips fell back in the day. It was a mean place. It was a mean time to be alive.
yeah, not right now where your lily ass can fucking watch Netflix and order barbecue or whatever online. It's all hard. It was hard back then.
Yeah,
People were
extremely
tougher.
difficult.
It was hard
yeah.
to order barbecue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You had to use smoke signals, and then you're thinking, why aren't I using this smoke just to smoke my own meats?
Yeah.
Cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
Now, the creation and the history of the Texas Rangers is actually really interesting. It's a story for a different day, though. Like, they had to learn how to fight kind of like Comanches in order to meet toe-to-toe with them, even at all. So, like, they had cold camps and shit where you didn't light fires and stuff. They ate, like, hardtack. Rough life, you know?
Well, the only way to defeat your enemy is to get inside. Yeah, you have to become them.
Yeah. Now, there was, as the Comanches would kidnap people and ransom them, or use them as slaves and then ransom them, that was a hard life, too, because they would, beat you and torture you and shit like that. And,
And then
use
ask you
as a
to
slave.
do the dishes.
Yeah. And it was rough, And when these sort of white sensibilities saw, like, what it means, for somebody to be like a Comanche slave, they were like, oh my god, this is not.
They're like, oh my stars and garters.
Yeah, this is not civilized. And it's like, well, right at the same time, there's a whole industry of slave trade happening in the South, and they, for some reason, can't make the two meld. But
Well, that's completely different.
right, yeah. But they ended up, they're the reason why they went to Samuel Colt, and they got like the Colt 45. They invented this basically to deal with Comanches, so they could actually fight mounted with pistols and a large caliber shell, so they could actually fight these guys. Because before you had 3 shots, right? And in that time you could be shot probably 15 times with an arrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's 3 more shots than Eminem had.
Yeah.
2 more shots than Eminem had.
And I need 6 minimum.
Yeah, I need 6. You got 6 shots.
Yeah.
And then a rap song about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, if you carry 2 of these pistols, you got 12 now, and it changes the whole power dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Red Dead.
Yeah. Now, there was a sort of a first botched diplomatic attempt where they were fighting the Comanche, and then they said, hey, we want some of these captives back. Bring them back, and we'll negotiate some release and maybe a lasting peace. So they get down there, and the Comanches come in, and all the white people are like, oh, fuck, for a while they're kind of being, things are kind of going well. Like, these guys set up, like, dollar pieces on, like, a tree, and, like, the children can shoot, like, in the middle of one with, like, a bow and arrow. And, like, so they're, like, really impressed, and they keep, like, setting up shit for, like, the kids to shoot with bows and arrows. And so, like, they go and they talk about, like, all these terms, and they have one captive that they brought back. They're supposed to bring back all of them. And that was an affront, right? But the one captive they brought back was a little girl, and she was covered in bruises and burns. And, in fact, her nose was burnt off.
Oh, fuck.
And they were like, oh, my god. And they weren't happy that all of the captives came back, but dude, this guy only commanded his one band. He can't control everyone else. You know, so that's why they don't get him back.
Give us back some of the people you captured. Different one. You got any of the other ones? Maybe less, you know.
Horrifying?
Yeah. I don't want like the
Well, they were glad to get her back.
Well, I'm sure they were, but it's like, you know,
You don't
I feel like
need to
there's
be bummed out all the time.
you go to Nike Town, you don't want the Nike outlet store, you know?
God.
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Well, what happened is you know, he's telling him all this shit, and it was probably a misunderstanding, because he said kind of like, how do you like that answer? Like, once you do this, I'll do that. How do you like that answer?
How do you like them apples?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the way it came off. And they were like, I don't like that answer at all.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, shit got really tense, and they tried to book it, and they closed all the doors, and like the main guy like pulled out his knife and started like slashing, and like they were all killed. And then all of a sudden, everyone's shooting at all the natives, women, children, everybody. So like a fight just erupts. It didn't go well. Like a bunch of them died, and then like ran away, and like now it's on. You know what I mean?
So some people died.
Yeah, it was called like the Council House fight.
Real brawl.
Yeah, and from then on both ends, it became a tit for tat.
A bit of a
you know what I
melee,
mean?
if you will.
Yeah. And there's something that you should know is that around this time, like when people are moving out there, it's because Mexico wanted to create a buffer state between them and the Comanches. And so what they did is they offered up a bunch of free land in this area for people to just come and settle. So a bunch of Americans like flooded in, right? And like this, like the Oregon Trail doesn't even exist yet. You know what I mean?
They're like, white people, come protect us with your fleshy shield bodies.
Seriously, stand in front.
Yeah.
Stand in front of them, please. You know?
Maybe they'll get so exhausted raiding the shit out of them that they won't make it down here.
Exactly. That was way what they're... But they didn't tell them that. They didn't tell them... They were like, free land.
Yeah.
And there's also Comanches out there. Anyway, free land. You know?
They're like, we just moved in. What's up with all the skeletons here? They're like, oh, that's not bones.
It's not bones.
That's a skeleton tree. It's indigenous to the area. It grows brain fruit.
Yeah. It grows naturally.
Yeah.
And one of these families, they lived on the absolute edge of the frontier. Like, middle of fucking nowhere. There's no government. There's no nothing out there, right?
Everybody in society hated this family.
Oh, man.
They're like, they're like, we don't need them. We're going to do our own thing.
Well, you might not be far off.
But they were original libertarians.
Oh, God.
Well, they were the Parker family, right? They only lived south, like 90 miles or something, south of modern-day Dallas. But they were actually from Illinois, and they moved in 1833. And it was a family of preachers. Like, all the men in the family were preachers. And their particular brand of Christianity was kind of, people were like, that's kind of too much. And it was called, they were Sedists. And a Sedist is somebody who thinks you're either the seed of God or the seed of the devil. And there's nothing you can fucking do about it.
And I guess that it might be based on race a little?
Could be, yeah.
Or, I don't know, the arbitration of a madman?
Exactly, exactly. There's actually, I think there's still a congregation down there that believes all of this stuff to this day. Which is nuts, honestly.
I mean, a lot of people believe a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
True.
Hey, getting away from society to have the religious freedom to be as crazy as humanly possible.
It's American way.
It's the American way.
Yeah.
It's like literally what this country was founded on.
Yes, exactly. They built a small fort called Parker's Fort, and it's still there. You can go
girls
see
allowed.
The Parkers have many descendants too. It's kind of crazy, but they were led by their patriarch was Elder John Parker. He was like the old man of him and his wife. You know, were
Sounds
like
fun.
He sounds
Yeah.
terrifying.
He actually served twice in the Revolutionary War. Twice in 1777 and 1779.
Once for the Americans and once for the English.
Yeah, it's a super crazy family. And yeah, like Daniel was like the really controversial preacher, right? And he wanted to move his whole congregation down here to Texas, you know? Like now it's like called like Parker County and all this stuff because of them, right? Super weird. But the ones that we're going to focus on are Silas and Lucy Parker, who were a part of the family, because their child was Cynthia Ann Parker, right? She's going to become very important to this story. And they moved down to this place, and, you know, a couple of them, James Parker, they, like, were instrumental in forming the first, like, Texas Rangers, right? And they eliminated their branch of it after a certain amount of time. Anyway, it's a whole thing. And they were in charge of guarding the fort, right? And for whatever reason, on May 19th, 1836, they left, like, the gates open. All the men were, like, in the fields and shit. Mostly women and children were at, like, the houses in the fort and
Is this Sandy Creek about to happen?
Well, sort of. They were approached by a band of Comanches, right? And Benjamin Parker went out there. Cynthia Ann's uncle went out there
Spider-Man's uncle.
to see what they wanted, right? And they were inexperienced and all this stuff, and they should never have even approached them. But again, no one's there, no one's armed. So they kind of had to just play along with, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, right? So he goes out there and they go, hey, show us to a watering hole and give us a cow to slaughter. And he's like, okay. So he like goes back to the fort, you know, and he's like, they don't want a watering hole. They don't need a cow. You know what I mean? They're here for something else. And like Silas is like, oh shit, like give me my gun, you know? And like the women and children and like the old people are moving out the back right now. And they're like taking off because something's gonna happen. Yeah. And like Benjamin's like, he's like picking up a few things and he's like, I'll go out there and see if I can placate them. And like Silas is like, don't go back out there. They're gonna kill you if you go back out there. And he's like,
no, I got this. I
think I can talk him out of it.
I'm gonna talk him out of it. I'm just gonna go out there and I'm gonna say, listen, boy, here's some stuff. I'm gonna trade you, and it's gonna be fine. and they're gonna let me do it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, and everything happened real fast, right? Benjamin, I believe that's Rachel's dad. His daughter was Rachel Parker Plummer. She sees this whole thing. Benjamin goes out there, he's instantly surrounded, and then, like, hacked to pieces. They shoot a bunch of arrows into him, like, from close range. They stab him a bunch of times with the lance, and then scalp him alive. And it happens like that.
So they give him the old Ed 209.
Yeah. And then it's fucking on. You know, they're all over the place, burning shit, and, like, stealing a bunch of shit, you know, and people are running, scattering in all directions. Rachel, I think she's 18 or 19. She's pregnant, and she has a son, a child. And she takes off running, and they get her, they overtake her, and they kidnap her and her son, and take off with her. And the older people, like Elder John and his wife, they're about a quarter of a mile away, and they run them down. And they strip them, Elder John and his wife, and then proceed to bash in Elder John's head with some clubs, spear him, shoot him with arrows, and then scalp him.
They're like so thorough.
Yeah. His wife is made to watch, and then she is brutally raped. They take a knife and stab it through one of her breasts. I believe they scalp her alive. And she somehow survives.
Jesus.
Ooh, I bet you she wishes that she didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I don't think actually she survived much longer, but she crawled all the way back to the fort. If you could imagine that. That would have been... This is in the desert, you know what I mean? You're totally fucked up, stripped, and then you crawl back to the fort like that. I could not imagine.
And
she's like, I need to get back and cancel my Only Fresh or whatever. I don't want them to keep on sending the boxes if I'm not going to be alive to cook the meals. I mean, I got cabbage that I'm not going to get to from the last meal kit. They just keep on coming faster than I can cook them, and I don't got the time. Anyway, so she died.
I thought that happened. The food kit part, not the other parts.
Mm-hmm. And Lucy is taking her children off in a different direction. She is also ran down. She's forced to surrender the children to the Comanches right then and there. She even hands up her child Cynthia Ann, who's 9 years old, to one of them on horseback, and then he rides away, and she never sees her again.
Pretty much like, take the children, but let me live.
Yeah. Please don't kill me. I have a family. You can have them.
Yeah. Silas is killed in the melee. Both of her parents are killed in the melee. Several other people are killed. Silas was, I believe it was Silas, who sort of had some doctor's equipment around, and they actually took a bottle of arsenic out of like his cupboard, and noticed it was like white, and they thought it was paint. And they painted their faces and shit, and then died almost immediately.
Got him.
Yeah,
Wow.
and they were like, "What the fuck is this?" And they're like, "I don't know," you know. But they were not kind to Rachel at all. They treated her like a slave. She was a slave to them. They kind of passed her around. She had a harrowing experience, honestly. Anytime she cried, they beat her, men and women alike, within the tribe. It was harrowing. There were times that she like got in a fight with another woman. The men stood around and watched her fight her. You know, super crazy shit. Yeah.
Did she win?
No!
A couple of times she did.
Oh, really?
Like,
Yes.
she, like, got enough gumption that she did, and, like, they straight up, like, respected her more.
Nice.
Really got to use that rage.
Yeah. But Cynthia Ann, they adopted, and they treated as if it was one of their own, because she was they did this a lot with prepubescent captives. Because, and that went with every tribe, and all the captives that they would get, some of them they would adopt in, because of things like inbreeding and things like this, you know. And from being in the saddle a lot, it would sometimes create infertility, or sometimes they'd have miscarriages a lot because of this.
She's a foundling.
What's a foundling?
So, in the Mandalorian culture in Star
God
Wars,
damn it.
Here we go.
Not again.
there's ones that were born into being a Mandalorian, but then during their conquests, they would find orphaned children from the people that they killed, and they'd bring them into the fold and train them in their ways.
Right.
Those are foundlings.
There you go. Okay. Well, and Cynthia Ann's name was Najwa, which means someone found. So there you go.
Oh.
But yeah, Rachel, she stayed with them for 13 months before she was ransomed and went back to her family. And it's truly harrowing stuff. Her baby was born among the Comanches, and she had it for a while, but it became
A hassle.
And one day, a group of men came into the tent, held her down, picked up her baby, and then strangled it in front of her.
No.
And handed it back to her. And when they realized that the child was actually still alive, they put a rope around it and then dragged it behind a horse.
Why?
Make sure it was dead.
But why? Why did they want to kill it in the first place?
It just
Something to
too much
do.
trouble. Too much trouble. The baby was way too much trouble. And
those
she wasn't
diapers.
All those
she wasn't
diapers,
fulfilling
yeah.
her duty, right? Whew.
That's
Yeah.
fucking rude.
Brutal as fuck,
That's
isn't
so
it?
bad.
Yeah.
You know, you hear people who say, like, I don't like kids.
Yeah.
These guys really don't like kids.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they go into a restaurant and they hear crying in, like, the back of the restaurant. They're like, we're going to go somewhere else to eat.
And when Rachel was rescued, I guess, the interesting part about it is that she was sort of shunned by white people because they knew she had been defiled by these Comanches, you know.
She couldn't just be like, out of all the girls in the raid, they chose me.
Jesus Christ, dude.
You can cut that.
That's fucked up. Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, it's a fucked up story. I
I
gotta
know.
tell fucked up jokes.
Yeah. It's kind of it's hard to be funny when you're telling.
I know. And she died a year later after being rescued because, again, they took captives that they had rescued and they just sort of like put them away for them to live out their life quietly and in their own sort of shell of shame in a lot of ways, which is so fucked up that like you want them back and all this stuff and then they have to live this way afterwards. Like, haven't they been through enough?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
You
I think reclaiming the lost person is more about it's the tit for tat, and it's about like personal vindication, being like, they don't get the pleasure of killing one of ours, but then you get them back and you're like, this is too icky for me to deal with.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put them in a box.
Situations.
So their abuse continues until they fucking die, and then we get to say like, oh man, it's so tragic that they died right after we got them back, and it's like, you're complicit in the fucking like in the downward spiral of horrible abuses that led to this person's demise.
Right. Exactly. You didn't help them. You know, really. You know. Cynthia Ann's what experience was not at all the same, and the thing is
this just because she was younger?
She was younger, yeah, and she could be assimilated. They knew that above a certain age, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, if you're a man and you were taken alive, you were tortured until you died. That was almost a given, right? If you were a baby, most likely killed. But if you were a prepubescent girl, sometimes boys, then you were welcomed into the fold.
You were the third bowl of porridge. You were just right.
Jesus. She learned. She pretty much became full Comanche. That was the only culture she knew. She stayed with them for 24 years. She was a full-fledged Comanche woman, and Comanche life is difficult. You know, they did all the buffalo skinning and all that stuff, which is dirty, nasty work. You know, and she fell in love with one of their sort of influential war chiefs, a guy named Pita Nakona.
You're like one of the more influential but young and hot war chiefs.
Well, something that like white society couldn't understand is like she's either living that horrific lifestyle, right, like Rachel, or she's like totally accepted and like skipping through like a meadow and like picking like flowers, and she's a happy Comanche, and it's like, no guys, this is real life here. Yeah. You know, like is it hard? Yes, but was she Comanche? Yes. Yeah. You know, there's nuance with all of these stories that we're going to tell.
Also, it's the temperature of the room that you're in. You know what I mean? Like, it might seem unthinkable because you've seen one facet of like how horrible interactions with this group can be, but if you're on the inside and you're integrated to that, like you kind of got to work with what you have.
Well, and the thing is there's shockingly little information about this time in Comanche culture because they just didn't write anything down. Well, so all the stuff that is written down is horribly brutal, right? Yeah. So you don't see all the good shit, right, that happens in their culture.
And unfortunately, if you're a kid and you're at an age where like you're not a full person yet, and you essentially get a reboot so early on, like it's easy to let that other shit go.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, and totally forget, really. Yeah. You know, and she had 3 children with Pita Nakona.
Pita Nakona.
Pita Nakona. Yep.
Did he even take his name? And her last name? Because then it would be Quanah Parker.
Yeah, right.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that, and I'm happy where you went.
Yeah.
They
Spider-Man's cool.
She forgot her name was Parker. You know, all that Parker stuff happens much later. They actually kind of defied Comanche tradition by naming their children themselves, which is not something you normally did. You normally got your name from something that happened, you know, or something that happened while birth was happening, right? Some people point to certain things with Quanah and his brother and his sister. We don't know. We don't know if any of that's true.
I don't know what I would have named my kid if we didn't get to name him ourselves. I don't know. His name would be like, She Wakes Me Up at 1 a.m. and the bed's all wet. Herman Trout. Because the water doesn't break like in the movies. Yeah. It's like
somebody pissed the bed.
It's like somebody pissed the bed and continues to piss.
Just long time.
For at least the 25 minutes it took to get to the hospital. So, maybe longer, but then she's in the bed. She's not my problem anymore.
They got pants for that.
Yeah, well, she doesn't even fucking care because she's on so much fentanyl, like legit fentanyl. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It hurts. I was there, okay? But, like, she got drugs. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Their kids were Topsana, prairie flower, that was the youngest. There was Quanah's brother, Picos, or Peanuts. Peanuts?
Okay.
He was never paid as much as he should have been.
There you go.
And then there was Quanah, the oldest. Quanah means anything to do with, like, a scent, like an olfactory sense. People say it could be stink, smell. It just means scent.
It means stank.
Yeah, right.
She got that stank.
Yeah.
Musk.
Musk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A sense. You know, the sense of smell is what that means. And there were sightings of Cynthia Ann, you know, and she was big news, you know. Every time somebody saw her, you know, it went all over the newspapers. Everybody in the United States knew Cynthia Ann's story, you know, the white woman that was taken in by the Comanches and became like the white squaw.
This probably happened a lot, though, right?
It happened a lot, but like they never found Cynthia Ann. They never like got her back or anything.
Yeah.
It happened a lot though. It did. But it was one of those stories where like she saw her whole family being murdered, and then you know she's been with them for a long time.
I'm sure there was other women it happened to. It's just Cynthia Ann was like the cutest and most bankable.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
She was blue-eyed, blonde hair.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sure there was some
John Benet Ramsey.
some real Ugmos that got integrated into the crew. And, you know, for the Comanches that got those kids, they were like, jackpot. And then they saw, you know, they saw the competition and were like, I think we might have stopped too soon. You know?
Yeah. What if that's what happened to John Benet Ramsey?
She got integrated into the Comanche?
I don't. Not in the 90s. But yeah, sometimes like traders would be like, "I bet that's that white squaw," and they tried to buy her, and they were like, "No, she's not for sale, not for any price." And they're like, they kept going up, and they straight up said like, "We'd rather die than give her up." She was like their family. That's like another thing. Like a lot of these like S.C. Gwynn's books sort of misses is that their culture is more based on kinship than anything else. You know, that's also hard for us to understand. You know, coming from like a government and things like this, it's hard to understand a whole society based off of kinship alone.
You know who's the one person who would understand? Probably Vin Diesel.
I was just gonna say.
He's like, I get it. I get why you wouldn't sell it. It's family. Vin Diesel, the Olive Garden as a company.
Yeah.
They're the Comanches are basically as if Vin Diesel ran the Olive Garden.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you hear your family.
Yeah. It's a...
I'm kind of doing Stallone.
But he keeps like burning down the Outback Steakhouse.
I want to see that movie.
Yeah. Now there was something that happened at a place called Pease River, and it would be known to history as the Pease River Massacre. And of course, it was one of those instances where they were like, the Pease River Battle.
Yeah, I was about to say the Battle of Pease River.
Yeah. No, it was some Texas Rangers that were killing indiscriminately. That was their mission. That's what they were there for. They were going to kill indiscriminately. Women and children. And they were straight up like, you know, cutting buffalo, processing buffalo when they came up on them, right? So it's a lot of women and children.
Yeah, they're like...
So they come in doing roundhouse kicks, hardcore, I'd imagine, because they're Texas Rangers.
Right.
And, you know.
They're like, I don't want to kill, but that's my job.
I have to.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
Do I like it? Yes. But that's unrelated.
Hey, do what you love and you never have to work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On my day off, I kill people, but it's people that I want to kill. When I'm on the job, I kill the people that Texas wants me to kill, which is all the people that I want to kill.
Coincidentally, yes, they are the same.
Yeah. There's some overlap.
Bit of a Venn diagram.
It's just one circle.
Yeah, it's one circle.
Now, they killed literally everyone that was there. 2 people escaped.
So they didn't kill everyone who was there. You're a liar.
2 people escaped, and they think that the 2 people that escaped were Quanah and his brother Picos. That they were the ones that escaped. Quanah would have been a kid, like 11 or 12 or something like that. And some people say that this is where Peta Nocona died. Quanah disputed this fact later in his life, said that he died actually later. We don't really know. Some people say this is where he died. Anyway, there were also there was 3 more survivors from this, because when they rode in and they started shooting everybody, like, wantonly, they looked at one, almost killed her, and there's 2 different ways this could have gone. Either they saw her blue eyes and didn't kill her for that reason, or she and this was something that they would do, she exposed her breasts.
Nice.
To show that she was a woman, right? And like, don't kill me, but they recognized she was white, and they're like, not that one. She's coming with us. And she had
they're gonna love Germany in 100 years.
Jesus.
And her hair was black now, because like from like the buffalo process, it changes sort of your makeup a
changes
lot of
your
ways.
DNA.
Well, being under the sun all the time and the buffalo grease and all that shit.
You got so much buffalo grease in your hair. Dyed black, you look like the Crow.
Yeah.
It's highly flammable.
Nice. Yeah. It was Cynthia Ann, her daughter, Prairie Flower, Topsana, and there was another boy, a small boy, who they named Peace Ross. Peace after the Peace River Massacre, and Ross because the guy that led this attack, his name was, he was a Confederate general. His name was Lawrence Sullivan Soul Ross. Soul Ross.
I thought you were going to say after Ross Geller from Friends.
I thought it was going to be Bob Ross, painting pictures, fucking everybody's lonely stay-at-home wives all over the country. Turns out he's got a past.
I think a lot of that's rumor, legend.
It was in the documentary about him. That was on. It was on the channel.
He does have a past, yes.
Yeah, but apparently he was doing painting tours, and I guess there was like lots of the chicks who showed up were like these like stay-at-home mom wives types, and they were like, "We love you," and he was like,
"I love you too, baby.
I love you too, baby." And they were like, "I want to stroke your chest hair," and he's like, "I want to stroke your crotch hair."
He's like, "There's a lot of Bubby to go around."
Yeah, it was just a lot of muff bumping and diving. It was the 70s. Anyway,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, except for to his wife, who was like, "Hey,
he's married.
Could you please stop fucking all these women on the side?"
And he's like, "No can do, baby doll.
Yeah,
I'm Bob Ross.
Yeah,
I got another case of hot dick.
Let me paint a happy little cloud for you and get you out of the fucking dumb." You were doing the whole thing and you gave up halfway through. I was trying to think of a word for being bummed out, but fucked it up.
I'm trying to paint happy little clouds, and you're painting a mean little storm cloud over my whole situation. I just came up with that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
comedy. It's that easy, Chris.
I pulled out handguns and hamburgers out of fucking nowhere, and it sounded better in reality than it did in my head.
Well, yeah, and that was straight up alliteration. So I
didn't even mean to. It just worked.
I wish handguns and hamburgers was the name of your autobiography.
Oh man. So yeah, Soul Ross adopted this little boy, and that's how a lot of this kind of stuff happened too. It would happen a lot when a white officer would take a little boy. A lot like Doc Holliday's dad.
Mm-hmm. He takes boys all the time.
He took that Mexican boy.
Yeah, I didn't mean it like a sexual way, but it sure sounded like I did.
Yeah, big time.
Cynthia Ann has this tragic second life when she was rescued, quote unquote, during the Peace River Massacre. She cried constantly for her children that she didn't know what happened to Quanah and Pecos. She would always mourn them. She did not speak any English anymore. She spoke Spanish, actually, fairly well, probably from trading with the Comancheros. Mm-hmm. And every time they'd get like a Comanche interpreter, she'd be like, "Take me back.
Yeah.
Take me back. I don't want to be here." And she would beg them profusely, take her back. She tried to escape multiple times. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, like multiple times. And they kept like, "You get back here."
They're like, "But you're one of us." And she's like, "I don't know who you are."
Yeah. And like her uncle, James, like he spent a harrowing few years looking for her. You know what I mean? Harrowing. He would go off by himself and shit. And like, he's the inspiration for the Searchers. James is kind of a fucking roustabout, you know. Cool. But he gave up after a certain amount of time. But she
Didn't
was given
love her enough.
Yeah, she was given to her uncle Isaac,
Okay.
and just be like, here's your niece. You're welcome. You know.
People suck at solving problems back then.
Yeah.
Especially stuff that involves, like, people.
Yeah.
Which is, like, most of the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. When he couldn't take care of her because she kept trying to leave, she kept cutting her hair with, like, a knife. Because they would do that in mourning. They would, that's what Comanche people would do. They would slash themselves with knives. They would cut their hair because they were going through mourning.
Self-harm.
Well, yeah, it's a way to sort of express your grief, right?
And actually feel something for once in your life.
Exactly, yeah.
Totally. Don't do that, folks.
No, don't do that. She had, and if you're thinking about doing that, there's no shame in seeing a therapist. Please do that. She would do all of these things, and every time she would talk to somebody, she was like, please get me out of here. And, like, they straight up would, like, they took her to Austin when they were first moving her around.
Barbecue.
And they dressed her up in white people clothes. They would take her to Austin to display her. They even, like, wrapped her in ropes and put white people clothes on her. And people gawked at her like she was some sort of circus attraction.
Jesus.
And she, like, after it was done, like, she tore off, like, the white people clothes and, like, put on her other Comanche clothes and shit. She wanted no part of living this second life among the white people.
So everybody in this story is either shitty or a victim.
Yes. Yes, and sometimes both.
Yeah.
You know,
enough,
life
yeah.
is fucking gray, you know. They also took her, Cynthia Ann, to, like, a court because they wanted to get her, like, a government stipend. You know, they wanted the government to provide money for her because she couldn't function in white society. And they gave her that, but then she never got the money. You know what I mean? Because what happened was the Civil War.
Oh.
And so they were like, you made that agreement with the Confederate state. Now that they lost, we have no such agreement. Right? So she never got any money, which is fucked. She was moved from family member to family member and further away. She went further east, away from Comancheria, rather than closer. She just knew that, and she got more and more depressed as she moved further and further away. There's an accepted story, and then there's something that other people think happened. So I'll tell both ways here. Either Prairie Flower died at the age of 5, and Cynthia Ann stopped eating. Eventually, she died from self-imposed starvation in 1870. Now, some people can find her in census data saying she's alive in 1870. And, you know, you don't put a dead person on a census, right?
Yeah.
So there's some confusion because they think, well, maybe they didn't think that Cynthia Ann was a fit mother. And they may have taken Prairie Flower from her and, you know, ushered her away into white society where she quickly assimilated and she sort of goes dark in the historical record, because there are some people that claim descendancy from Topsana, from Prairie Flower, and they're very proud of this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, they don't have any proof. And I would love to know if Topsana actually did exist from this.
So is there a chance that there was any kind of, like, government money that did go to, like, Cynthia Ann, and maybe somebody was claiming that money after she died and would claim her on census data in order to get that money?
That is a possibility, maybe. No proof. The accepted story is that Topsana died, and then that she starved herself to death and died in 1870. This would always be a mystery throughout Quanah's life, because he stayed with the Comanches, and he wouldn't know his mother's faith until much, much later. And yeah, we'll kind of get into that a little bit later on in the story, too. A lot of people consider Cynthia Ann's second kidnapping as the most tragic, because of how she lived the rest of her life. And there's like 2 pictures of her in existence. One of them is the first one where she's nursing Prairie Flower. You know, people of high society wouldn't ever have like a breast exposed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was a curiosity for a lot of people. And there's another one where she's clearly dressed up. She does not look happy in the photo. That people like, wow, that's her, you know? And it's really actually amazing to see. But yeah, it was a very tragic end to her life. That second sort of kidnapping.
Which is crazy. That's like that the rescue would be the real kidnapping in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely. Yeah. Now Quanah, getting back to Quanah, when he went back to the tribe, he says that his father died a couple of months after the Peace River Massacre. We don't know. Either way, he became an orphan. Him and his brother did. And his brother died not too long after of smallpox as well. And actually, the Comanche, their numbers used to be in the hundreds of thousands, and then all of a sudden it was down to like 5,000. You know what I mean? Well, they had cholera outbreaks. They had smallpox outbreaks that decimated their numbers. And it must have been horrific to see, you know what I mean? Because shit like that, when you have all these people with uncontrollable diarrhea and shit like that, it poisons everybody. And so you run away, and then you affect other bands, right?
Yeah, no indoor plumbing.
Exactly, yeah.
And nobody's wearing masks, nobody's social distancing.
Yeah. Drinking clean water, things like this. So he was looked down upon, Quanah was, for being an orphan, but also for having white blood in a lot of ways. So it was rough growing up. He said that he couldn't get anyone to like mend his clothes and things like that. He kind of had to beg for food for a while. But when he got older, he wanted to prove himself as a Comanche man, and that meant going on raids and shit like that, and he did. And the buffalo were thinning. Like, they would thin in just under a decade, you know what I mean?
Well, you got Wyatt Earp out there.
Yeah. You got Bat Masterson out there, and so their way of life is going away. And like his first raid that he led was a fucking disaster. He walked back to his band, which must have been humiliating for him as a writer. You know what I mean?
Well, and he's already at a disadvantage, like socially.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, it didn't help that his parents fell down right when he got there.
Yeah. And there were so many chicks there, and they laughed and they laughed. And he was like, "Why did you have to bring the chicks?"
Well, and he was taller than most of them. He was 6 foot tall, which was way taller than most of them.
So he taller than a lot of people back then.
Yeah.
He could dunk.
Yeah. He had gray eyes, too. That mixture between brown and blue, I guess. I guess gave him those gray eyes. Like gray. They said like steely gray eyes. Did he kill children and infants? There's no proof, but probably. Probably. That's the way life was.
It was the style at the time.
It was his main thing.
Yeah. Actually, something I think is worth mentioning, Quanah's grandfather, his name was Iron Jacket. And why? Because he wore a fucking old Spanish, suit of mail, curious.
A full metal jacket.
Yeah, exactly. Which is super cool. They were like, he's bulletproof.
Hamburger Hill.
Yeah. But during the Civil War, all of the men went off to the war. So then they were like, oh, whatever the fuck is happening over there, they're all gone.
Yeah.
We can go back to what we were doing.
Time to party.
Huh.
And for a while they did, and it was sort of all right. It was great for them.
I don't know where they went, but glad they're gone.
Yes, very much that. Very much that. And it was sort of around this time that people they started signing treaties. There's the Medicine Lodge Treaty that we talked about in the Red Cloud series. And Quanah was, he's a Quahati. He was a extremely remote band of Comanche. You know what I mean? Extremely remote. So they never signed shit.
Yeah.
I ain't signing shit.
Yeah.
I didn't sign shit. I didn't rig shit.
I didn't rig shit. I didn't do fucking shit.
Yeah. But he could see the writing on the wall. You know what I mean? And he was leading bands and shit. There were times where their leader was killed, and because of something that Quanah did that was awesome, they were like, "You're our leader now, motherfucker," And so he was leading them.
He's getting promoted pretty quick.
Oh yeah, and he became powerful in his own right. He was sort of a self-made Comanche man, And the way of measuring wealth amongst Comanches were how many horses you had, right?
Right.
And he had so many fucking horses.
He was getting them, right?
Yeah.
He was stealing them and whatnot, But it was around this time that they're recognizing that the buffalo's gone, right? And so they're steering their anger towards these buffalo hunters, right? And they looked at one such place, which was a place called Adobe Walls, right? And
Crossover.
because earlier Kit Carson had narrowly escaped with his own life at Adobe Walls.
Not the one guy who blew his own brains out.
That was the second battle of Adobe Walls, so we're about to talk about. And what happened was Quanah, he wanted to attack this place and like send a message.
Because fuck it, that's why.
He wanted to use every part of the Buffalo Hunter.
And there was a holy man that sort of came to fruition during this time. His name was Isatai. And I'm not making this up. And I knew this was going to be a thing, but in transliterated, it means quite literally either coyote or wolf. But it's one of those two. Coyote vagina is what Isatai meant.
Right.
So
San Diego, a coyote's vagina.
I do feel like there's certain... You're like, oh, here we go. They're going to laugh at this. And we're like, yeah, all right. It's a little too on the nose.
I know.
I mean, if it meant dingleberry, I'd be laughing my ass off.
Yeah.
Because I'm a child.
Also, I haven't seen a lot of coyote vaginas, okay? So I don't know. Are they hilarious? Are they kind of sexy? I don't know. I don't have access to those subreddits yet.
Well, he claimed that with his medicine, he could stop the white man's bullets.
No.
And that white man's bullets wouldn't touch you, that he could go up into the great spirit realm and commune with the great spirits, you know. He also could make arrows appear out of nowhere. Like, he was a huckster.
Oh.
So
that he couldn't do that stuff.
He couldn't. He was a magician, right? And they were like, wow. You know?
He was a Comanche grifter.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Everybody's grifting back then.
Yeah.
You're either grifting or you're getting grifted.
Yeah, exactly.
It's grift or be grift out there.
Well, Quanah was a true believer. And him and Isatai, they went around to all these people, all these Comanche bands, and recruited like an army. And even other, even others they went to, some Cheyenne came with them and stuff like this.
I've done some crazy things for like wild pussy. So
so like we said in our last series, Quanah Parker shows up with his army, numbering somewhere in the 250 range, or 250 range to 1,000 range of warriors at Adobe Walls to punish these buffalo hunters, right, at this trading post there. Like, Bat Masterson is one of the 20-some people that were there to guard it. Thinking that they were impervious to bullets and all of these things, they charged, right? And Quanah himself led the charge. And he, even jumped on one of their sod houses and, tried to fire, in at them.
Stomped up and down on it.
sounds legit.
His own horse was shot out from under him. He was shot in the shoulder as well. And he was really good at rallying his people despite being injured. So that's why it kept on for longer. But the rest of the, elders, they were pissed that the magic wasn't working, And they went up to Isatai and they were like, if you're so fucking impervious to bullets, why don't you go down there and get my dead son? How about,
He wasn't there for the raid?
He was there, but he wasn't participating. He was there.
If you're a good grifter, you get out before people can realize your magic doesn't work.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So they're pissed, right? Because they're being slaughtered by groups. This group.
Yeah.
They retreated to a ways away, and they're chewing Isatai out. What the fuck, dude? This is bad medicine, bad luck. All of a sudden, one of them's horse goes down, and they're like, "What the fuck?" And then they retreat, and even where they're at, Isatai's next to this guy, and then he drops dead, and there's a bullet in his head, and they're like, "Oh my god." And it was that shot from Billy Dixon that we talked about.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't even hear the shot. Just all of a sudden...
He used the bullet magnet spell.
Yeah.
They're very similar. I can see how he'd fuck it up.
Whoopsie doozles. But after that...
That one's an old coyote vagina.
Yeah, exactly. They retreated. After that, they kind of broke up into these bands, right? And their own bands, and just sort of struck out in all directions, right? Against all these settlements, and just started raiding in all directions.
It's like a reverse supergroup.
Yeah. Yeah. It fell apart, and they had to burn... they had to keep going and burn anything else they found.
They were like, run, try not to get hit, burn some shit on your way out.
Yeah, pretty much. And, the people of Adobe Walls, took the bodies they could find and, like, stuck their heads on fucking pikes out in front of it.
It was the style at the time.
Yeah. Brutal on both sides, guys.
I'm sure there was a necklace of ears in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Gnarly shit like that. Absolutely. So they became like a guerrilla fighting force, a scattered guerrilla fighting force, and the United States Army was now in charge, right? Because they didn't want Texas Rangers, who were Confederate, in charge. And that's why a lot of people go, the U.S. Army was sort of incompetent because they hadn't learned, like the Texas Rangers, how to fight these guys. So they needed somebody who could know, right?
Yeah.
And it fell upon Colonel Ranald Slidell Mackenzie. It is Ranald, not Ronald.
Ranald.
So
Ranald.
he's like, I can't decide whether I want to be Randall or Ronald. So I'm going to be Ranald.
Ranald.
Did he still go by Randy?
I don't think so, no. Colonel Mackenzie. He was also called Bad Hand because he was wounded 6 times in the Civil War. 6 times.
All in the same hand.
One of them blew off a bunch of hands on it, or a bunch of fingers on his hand.
Oh.
He would actually click his stumps, like pop the stumps.
That's cool.
God.
Yeah. That was something he would do.
He's like, I got a special gun, and the triggers of the punk, I use it to shoot whoever.
Yeah. It's a direct quote.
Sure.
But a lot of people call him the anti-Custer because he was actually really good. He was first in his class at West Point.
Didn't make a video game based on him.
No.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. The sexual video game.
It's really fucked up.
So it's a rape video game. It was for the Atari 2600. It was called Custer's Revenge.
That's right.
And the whole point was to you're dodging arrows, and you go up and you essentially rape native women tied to
That's
a pole
so
Yep.
while dodging arrows. And it was an officially licensed game for the Atari 2600.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's pretty
Yeah.
fucking stupid.
Welcome to the Gamescast.
History of video games.
But specifically games for the Atari 2600.
But yeah, no, Mackenzie did very well. He was first in his class at West Point, whereas Custer was second to last in his class at West Point.
What a doofus.
Yeah.
More like Buster.
I'd really like to meet the guy who was last.
Yeah, right after Custer.
It was a rock with googly eyes. We don't even know how he got in here. He's just super charismatic. Have you seen those eyes?
Yeah.
His
Look at the way they bounce around when he's on the back of a horse.
his admission
tape him on
papers
there.
just got shuffled through. But General Grant even called Mackenzie the most promising officer in the Army. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we don't know Mackenzie more is because he was not a showboater in the way that Custer was. Mm-hmm. He would make even, like, crazy engagements sound really boring on his reports back, which would almost ensure the fact that he wouldn't be remembered.
He's like, I don't need to be remembered for this shit.
Yeah. He was a no-nonsense guy. Mm-hmm. He drilled his soldiers constantly. They even didn't really like him because he was such a hard ass. Mm-hmm. But they were also like, I would rather be with him than anyone else because he knows what he's doing. You know?
He was the Larry Bird of West Point. He was all about just fundamentals.
Yeah. Did they teach you about the fundamentals, son? He actually commanded the 41st U.S. Infantry, which was a segregated division. They were Buffalo Soldiers is what they were, because he was capable of leading such a group. Where he's like, I don't give a fuck who you are, as long as you're a good soldier. You know, like, that's kind of the guy he was.
It's kind
he
of
was
badass.
He was no nonsense, yeah. He was dispatched to deal with all this stuff, and luckily he had drilled his soldiers so well that they were in fighting condition. You know, it wasn't like, you know, where Red Cloud fought, you know. Like, those guys really had no idea what the fuck they were doing. Like Colonel Carrington and stuff, you know.
A bunch of fucking conscripts who don't know what's what with leadership that's just like some college kid who's never had any battlefield experience.
Exactly, yeah. Mackenzie was not... like, he was at Bull Run, you know. Like, Mackenzie had seen... like the mall.
Shit.
He had seen the worst of battle.
He's been in the shit.
Yeah, he was, yeah. his first foray into chasing the Comanches was a fiasco. He didn't know what he was getting into even then, because he chased Quanah and his band all over the panhandle of Texas. All over, and could never catch up with them. And, like, he's moving his whole village, right? So there's women and children, and they still can't fucking find him. And, like, they would chase him through Blanco Canyon, is where they chased him. And they realized, they're like, not only are we following the tracks of women and children, but they also did this, like, loopsy-doozle thing, where they were like, they're actually behind us. And they had to, like, turn around, and, like, he got really frustrated, because he just couldn't he chased them all over, and he couldn't find a one of them.
It's like a Scooby-Doo hallway scene.
I know, I was going to say, I'm chasing through this canyon, next thing I know, this hallway, and we're going indoors, and they're coming out of doors, and then we're all in a band together for some reason.
Yeah, Yakety Sax is playing. Yeah. It's a Benny Hill situation. Yeah. But in this way, he sort of learned, like, trial by fire, a lot like the Texas Rangers, about how to fight these guys. You know what I mean? Like, we need cold camps. We need to be mounted all of the time. The fact that these guys can travel so quickly, you know, is just mind-boggling.
Maybe fight by the light of the moon.
Yeah. Instead of chasing Quanah, he was instead dispatched to, anytime there was a raid, he would, like, hurry over and find where they were camping. And it was a brutal end of guerrilla warfare, is what the Red River War turned out to be. This is the whole Red River War, basically, is all of these people striking out in all these directions, and Mackenzie scrambling to stop it all, right? And he was successful as he went along. And what that success meant was not chasing them, burning their village, and then taking their horses, because that was their power, and then shooting all of them.
Right.
Cool.
Okay.
Fucking ass.
So, like, he captured... Because, like, sometimes if you didn't watch your horses at night, like, Comanches would come in at night and run away all of your horses, right?
Man.
And now you can't do shit, right?
They untie him and they slap him on the bottom.
Yep, exactly. And you wake up and there's no more horses, right? So he found their source, right? Their horses. And he had, like, 1,000 of them. And he gave a few to his military scouts, kept one for himself, and then shot the rest. And it took the whole day to shoot 1,000 horses.
It's like,
And like, they piled them all up.
What'd
on a
you do
mount.
today? I got up at 8 a.m. and I started shooting horses. And at 8 p.m., I shot all the horses and I went to bed.
Yeah. It took until like 3 p.m. to shoot all of them. And they piled them all into this mound, and it became this mountain of skeletons, horse skeletons, bleaching in the sun.
Talk about living that skeleton life.
yeah.
And it actually became a landmark for travelers. Like, turn right at the fucking
Pile of dead horses.
Yeah, exactly. The bones.
The mountain
Yeah.
of fucking gnats and fucking rotting meat and skeletons.
Yeah.
It was a regular Circle K.
Yeah.
So as Mackenzie ran over all of these bands and stuff and forced them onto reservations, there was one left. And Mackenzie knew who it was. He's like, that's that motherfucker that I've been hunting, you know? And like Quanah, he may have actually raided his own family and not even known. Like the Parkers, he may have done that, not even known.
Well, it's not really his family anymore.
Well,
Right.
I mean, by blood, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, but it's not his actual family. They sent out, like, peace scouts, like a small group of peace scouts off to find him. And they did. And when they saw that, oh, these are, like, people that want to, like, parlay, you know, they invited him in. And Quanah, surprisingly, was receptive
It's like, all right.
to their demands, because he had burned the hottest
It's like,
when it came to killing Texans and shit.
You caught me on a good day.
Yeah, honestly. But honestly, I think it was just the fact that he saw the writing on the wall. But at the same time, like, he was the one that hated the Texans the most. He would even say, like, where are you from? People would even be like, Colorado? You know? Because he did not like the Texans, right? Yeah.
When you're an American, you go anywhere that isn't America.
Well, and they're like, oh, Colorado, huh? Do you know this thing in Colorado? Do you know that thing? They'd grill you to make sure, you know. So you had to know what you were talking about. You couldn't just say anything, you know? But yeah, he was surprisingly receptive and even said, like, no, yeah, we'll go. We'll surrender. we'll go live on a reservation. We'll become farmers. Even though I don't think anyone knew actually what that meant. Yeah. They didn't... I don't know if they could totally conceive of staying in one place for the rest of time.
It's not really their style.
No, it's anathema to them. To even farm, they were like, this is women's work.
Yeah.
This is not for us. How am I going to prove that I'm a man?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do? Kill corn?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing's more manly than taking care of your family.
Yeah. Quanah was kind of bent on at this point into sort of like, okay, let's do the peace angle now, because Texas had kind of gone through the Sam Houston thing of like, we need to make a lasting peace with these Comanches, and then Mirabeau Lamar, who was like, fuck it, kill every motherfucking last one of them, and then like Sam Houston came back.
He's like, oh, god damn it.
And it was all fucked up. And, like, the Indian agency, like, from the White House, from back east, was super corrupt. It was all fucked up. Everyone was on the take. So it's amazing that Quanah could actually make this work. You know what I mean? Even though they never once signed a treaty, even though those treaties, in a lot of ways, they kind of, they rewarded hostility. Because it's like, oh, I go out raiding. And then, we sign a treaty saying stop that, and then they give me a bunch of shit. Yeah. And I just keep doing what I'm doing.
And then I just do it again. We sign another treaty.
Yeah, exactly. I keep getting cool shit.
Is that not how that works?
This is the reverso spell of essentially the white man makes me sign a treaty and then doesn't follow it. They're like, oh no, I know that I can leverage it.
Yeah. Well, and there were times where, so like when Quanah and they're all like, okay, great. We're going to the reservation. Okay. Government's going to pay for a bunch of shit, right?
Yeah.
And then they show up and they're like, okay, where's our food? Where's our da-da-da-da-da? And they're like, Congress has to ratify that first. It doesn't happen instantly. And they're like, you're a bunch of fucking liars. Because they don't have
We're going to kill you.
Right? Like, I mean, think about it from their point of view. Like, Congress has to...
The fuck is Congress?
Yeah. Like, you have to...
Stop making up words.
Yeah. Like, why don't you just give us food, for God's sake?
Give us the food.
Yeah, so there would be rogue bands that, no food? Well, fuck you then. And Quanah, like, trying to make this all work, he would go out and be like, come on, guys. Come on back.
Patience.
And honestly, if it's something that everyone agrees on with Quanah, it's his unbound optimism. He was incredibly optimistic. He always thought that if he could just fix all of this, then everything would be fine for him and his people. If he could just figure all this out, right?
Was he right?
In a lot of ways, he was.
I was joking.
He was, in a lot of ways. And we'll kind of get into this. They surrendered. They went to Fort Sill, which is super interesting because, like, they still have schools there and stuff, and, like, Letterman jackets with, like, FS on it, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And what happened is there's the reservation days where, like, they gotta line up for food, and it's very degrading. There's not a lot of dignity in that for anybody, let alone these fucking master step riders, I keep calling them step riders.
Yeah.
Because they're a lot like step riders. And there's just no dignity in that, right?
Well, yeah.
But Quanah, what he did is he started to take the land that they had and started renting it and leasing it out to these cattle barons that, on the, around Cimarron and on that Chisholm Trail.
Yeah.
So when guys are bringing their cattle from, down south in Texas all the way up to Abilene and Kansas and Dodge City, that they can go through and let their cattle graze there.
And not die.
Yeah, and he would patrol it, too, because sometimes they would just, let their cattle graze and not pay or whatever. And he's like, no, you get your fucking cattle off my land right now, or I have some Comanches over here that are just hungry to kill you, dude. And they would. And, like, they would not fuck with him, And he made a lot of money doing this, leasing out the land and stuff. And he started dressing like a white man. He enjoyed all of the new shit.
The trappings.
The trappings of the white lifestyle.
Yeah, like Netflix and...
He...
Trader Joe's.
Yeah. He started wearing a Stetson hat and, like, suits and shit. And
Dude, I can't count the number of people I see at Trader Joe's wearing Stetson hats.
Yeah.
He was made the chief of all Comanche, which, as we know, is like, what? It's kind of preposterous, right?
Well, there's got to be a lot of leadership of these other bands that were like,
You're right.
News to me, motherfucker.
You're right, and they were not happy when he got that title, and because they were more influential within their bands, right? There was one chief. He was a war chief. His name was Here's the Sunrise, and he did not appreciate
Here comes
all this
the
shit.
sun.
Yeah,
He did not appreciate. Where'd that come from? I don't know.
That's the Beatles.
Yeah,
wasn't it George Harrison
it was the
specifically?
Beatles.
Yeah,
Chris.
I know. It was the Beatles. Baytils.
The who? The Beatles.
the Beatles. Yeah,
The Beatles. Badil.
Yeah.
S.
Now, one of the first things that Quanah did when he got to Fort Sill, because Colonel Mackenzie was actually in command of Fort Sill, and Mackenzie actually had this odd respect for Quanah, because Quanah had never lost a battle, not once, except for maybe Adobe Walls, right? It wasn't like an open pitch battle. There's a reason why Comanches didn't attack like fortified positions ever, except for Adobe Walls, right?
It's antithetical to their combat style.
Exactly. So he had this respect for Quanah, and the first thing that Quanah wanted to know when he got to Fort Sill was, where's my mother and my sister? Where are they? And Colonel Mackenzie actually helped him figure that out, and he goes, your mother's dead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's like, you're not gonna like it.
Yeah. And some people point to certain things that maybe he visited Topsana, maybe he didn't. Because, he went and, like, gathered rogue bands. Because they knew they would listen to Quanah and not them, you know. And he was a smooth operator when it came to that kind of shit, you know. He was very, very shrewd, you know, in all aspects. He even wheeled and dealed with the U.S. government to get, like, the best prices and stuff for their land and stuff, you know. Even though not everyone agreed with every decision he made, and whether or not he was right or wrong, at the end of the day, he was looking after their well-being, first and foremost. And he went back east, you know. He actually, one time he almost died because he went back east with his father-in-law.
Yeah.
He married multiple times. More on that later. But with one of his father-in-laws, they went back east, and they were staying in a hotel, and they had kerosene-burning lamps. Mm-hmm. And his father-in-law blew out the lamps instead of turning them off.
Oh.
And his father-in-law died of asphyxiation.
Good job,
because it just loaded with... This was a mistake that a lot of Native Americans made.
They just didn't know.
They didn't know. Yeah, you blow out the candles, right?
Yeah.
You know? And seems right, you know? And he was injured from it, you know, he had to recover from it, got real sick. He went all over the place. He got a car, an automobile.
Nice.
He learned how to drive it. He actually had a driver who was deaf and dumb. And his name was George Washington.
Oh.
But everyone called him Dummy.
Yeah.
Which is not nice.
Yeah.
It's not nice.
Well, he didn't know.
No, he didn't.
So, and that specific disability is you're deaf and you can't talk.
Yes, you're mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mute deaf.
Yeah, mute and deaf.
Safe for being on the road.
Yeah.
I suppose so.
Mute deaf people make the best assassins.
It's true.
He asked for permission to go out on like a last buffalo hunt, right? And they thought like this is going to be like the last time. And they didn't find any buffalo. It's extremely depressing. They actually went back to Paladura Canyon, which is where their like headquarters used to be, you know, for all the Quahatis.
Yeah.
And that was like their stronghold. No white man would ever think of going to Paladura Canyon, you know, a decade ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they went there, and within just the time that Quanah was in the reservation, it had already been sold to a white man. Mm-hmm. And it was already fenced. Yeah, like, there was a guy there.
So I bet you there's a bunch of Quanatis there.
Quahatis?
Well, no, all the Quahatis are gone, but it's just
Yes.
Quanatis now.
I get it.
I get it. I understand. The guy that was there, his name was Goodnight. Turns out he was actually present during the Pease River Massacre. Which is super nuts.
They're like,
right?
what's your thing? And he's like holding a pillow and he's like, nothing.
Well, he was the guy that owned Paladura Canyon, this area of Paladura Canyon. He has cows there, and they start killing his cows. So he came out like, what the fuck?
It was a good night.
Well, he's
Good
like,
night,
listen,
cow.
I'll let you guys have a cow or whatever until you find the buffalo. And they never found buffalo. But Charles Goodnight and Quanah Parker became friends through this, which is super fucking weird.
Yeah.
That they would become friends. Quanah, once he found out who his mother was, and the fact that, his white lineage, he started going by Quanah Parker. He adopted that. Like, he almost represented the meeting of the worlds in a lot of ways.
Well, in a way, like, it seems to me that it was easier for him, and maybe this is like a blanket lesson of people that kind of have, because of circumstance, have kind of this like crazy like spider web of lineage. Being able to discover those facets of yourself and your past on your own terms might make you a little bit more enlightened to accepting them.
Right, exactly. And a lot of people say that. Basically, that exact thing about Quanah Parker is that's why he was so receptive. Is because he himself embodied the bridge between the two worlds.
Yeah, he found it on his own.
Yeah, absolutely. They told him, they were like, Quanah, you gotta not have so many wives, okay? You're living in a white man's world now. Polygamy is illegal.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, you're jealous.
Well, he basically did. He goes, when you asked me to surrender, you said, Quanah, stop fighting all the goddamn time. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, sure. But you never once asked me, Quanah, how many wives do you have?
I want to see his one-man show. Like his Type 5.
Oh my God.
This is not a direct quote. But
he's like, you think it's all easy and like banging all the time, but have you ever gotten nagged at by 20 wives?
He married 8 times. He had 8 wives.
Okay, 8 wives? That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Like, bad in your ear times 8. Come on.
Well, and he straight up said, this is almost a direct quote, but he goes, all right, you pick which ones I can't have, and you tell them. It's not going to be me. You tell which ones have to go away now.
See, he's a smart guy.
And
See?
Yeah. And beforehand, I want you to go through the list and then pick the ones that, are kind of like not so great. And, why don't you pick the wives that you don't want to have and then tell me I can't have them?
Well, some of his wives were
something shitty.
Some of his wives weren't too cool with him taking a bunch of wives too, and they would leave him later on in life for a lot of different reasons. He became in debt a little later in life. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but his first wife...
Fair weather wives.
His first wife was when he was still with the Comanches. Her name was Tahoya, and she was actually Apache. Because she couldn't learn the Comanche language, she asked Quanah if she could return to the Apache. And he took her back. He took her back there. His second wife, though, is this whole, this little story here, which is kind of fucking crazy. 1872, he married Wakia. The thing was he couldn't pay the dowry to her father. And he had like 10 horses to give to her father. And there was a rival suitor. And he was like, I can do 20 horses. I can do double that. And Quanah, like, all right, and goes around, rounds up 20 horses, and, like, hands them over. And he's like, all right, what about now? And the guy's like, I'll do 25 horses, something like that. And so they elope. And, like, Quanah, like consolidates his power, and they realize he's way too fucking powerful to, like, go after him. Mm-hmm. So they go, give me 19 horses, and we'll call it good. And he did, It's just kind of amazing,
I'd like to think one of the horses was like 3 ponies in a trench coat.
Yeah.
He's like, where am I going to find more horses?
Yeah. But the rest of his wives, there was Choni, there was Machita Wuki, there was Awu Wutakum, there was Kobe, there was Tope.
So you went more exotic with the names, and then you brought it back, and I think that's where the humor was.
Yeah.
And then there was Phil.
There was Tope, and there was Tarnarsi.
And Diane.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's better than Phil.
And he has some pictures with a couple
His
of
wife,
his wives.
Phil.
There's one.
It was a lady's name at the time.
There's actually a lot of pictures with Tope in there, and she's very striking looking. Very interesting pictures. If you're on our Discord, I'll share those pictures with you.
Photos were a precious commodity at the time, so you want to use your hottest wife for the photos.
Well, and Quanah loved having his picture taken. He had multiple pictures taken of himself. There was one point where Quanah's doing very well for himself and renting out the grassland. They call it grass money, to the cattle barons. That he made friends with these cattle barons, and he convinced them. I don't know how he did, but he convinced them to pay for a house, and they built him this sprawling mansion, kind of.
He's like the original influencer.
He built this big house, and it has like this magnificent porch on the front, and he has these stars painted on it, and it's called Star House because these stars, they're actually painted upside down, which is super fucking metal. All the stars on the roof. But yeah, he would receive people at Star House, like if you were hungry, and like you could come to Quanah and he would feed you. So like his house was constantly abuzz. He had 25 children, with his 8 wives. It was full of people all the time, but he received foreign dignitaries, like Teddy Roosevelt came to Star House.
So he had like a lot of resources, but like no condoms.
Well, you measure your power with your virility back in the day, you know. But no, Quanah Parker and Teddy Roosevelt were actually really good friends. Quanah Parker was in Teddy Roosevelt's inauguration parade. And he was in that same parade with, like, people who had tried to kill him. So there was, like, United States Army generals that were like, fuck that guy. Like, I can't believe he's with us.
And he's like, fuck you, too.
He's like, fuck you, I fucking killed, Yeah. But he was smart because Quanah actually never talked about all the people he had killed. He was really cagey about that. And, it's a diplomatic thing is you don't talk about, this one time I was scalping this guy, like you didn't talk about that.
Could have been your brother.
Yeah. He knew when to say when,
Yeah.
But yeah, Teddy Roosevelt visited him at Star House. They actually served wine in big goblets because when he was at the White House, they served wine in small goblets. And like
That's a flex.
Yeah, he never drank, but it was a flex. Yeah. He took him out on a wolf hunt, and there's this great picture of like Teddy Roosevelt and like Quanah Parker, and like there's all these other dudes around. Teddy Roosevelt loved that kind of shit because he had Teddy Roosevelt's ear. He was able to sort of wheel and deal, you know what I mean, and get the most.
Yeah, for his guys.
For his guys, and that's why there's no reservations, no Comanche reservations in Oklahoma now, is because there was one point in history where they gave out allotments of land. And did it fuck people over? Yeah, it did. But Quanah made the best out of that situation that he could, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what he was known for, is making the best out of any situation. He was a consummate optimist.
He used all parts of the situation.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He became aware that the native children were not welcome in the white schools. The white people just did not want them there. And so he formed his own school district and was the president of the school district.
So he's like got a Professor Charles Xavier situation.
Yeah,
on
man.
his hands.
The story's nuts.
So that Fort Sill school district, that was all his doing. It's super nuts that he was able to do something like this.
Yeah.
Quanah Parker was actually in the first 2 reel film ever made in 1908. He was in the movie The Bank Robbery, which is actually on YouTube, which is super nuts. I feel that in the year 2022, you can see Quanah Parker on your computer.
I was going to say
on
video,
your phone.
It's going to be 240p. You're not going to like the resolution.
It's 480 or 720, I believe. But
it's transferred.
It's truly amazing that you see really
that is cool.
him.
You got
right there.
Was he ever in a movie with Pancho Villa?
No, but I mean, they were so close. They almost could have been. They almost could have been.
It was a real Channing Tatum, Ryan Reynolds situation.
Yeah.
They were both in their own lane making films.
Well, in Pancho Villa, he was in movies later on, right? This is in 1908.
Yeah,
super early movie.
He was actually the train coming into the station. He played that.
He steps off of a train. You can see him in it. It's truly amazing.
Oh, it's like the beginning of Final Fantasy. The cloud,
Yeah, he starts fighting guys immediately.
Yeah. Quanah Parker was actually instrumental in making the Native American church movement, and it was sort of this blend of Christianity and Native practices. He was actually adamant of keeping peyote as a sort of tool for religious ceremonial purposes.
Cool.
To this day.
Payouts.
Yeah, to this day, they still use peyote in their ceremonies. And actually, Quanah Parker is quoted as saying this, quote, "The white man goes into his church house and talks about Jesus, but the Indian goes into his teepee and talks to Jesus."
Oh, hell yeah. Gets all high, changes your perspective on a bunch of shit.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
He was the Hansel of his time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw Zoolander.
Yeah. Anyone that's ever read any of that Carlos Castaneda stuff, The Way of Power and stuff, they know all this type of stuff. Super cool. And friends, dear listener, don't go out and just do peyote. Like, this is a very...
or do it. Fuck it.
This is a very religious sort of
Jump off the
drug.
bridge.
It must be prepared in a certain way. You know, you have to do certain things a certain way.
It's like ayahuasca.
I think,
Yes.
Was it like Schultze when he went to down the Amazon to fucking, take ayahuasca? He realized that it wasn't a recreational
No, it's not.
experience.
It's not. No.
It was meant to be. It's this like very violent growth experience.
Yes.
And peyote is shamanistic, and it's
Right.
not a recreational thing.
No, it's really not. But you know what? There are parts of the peyote button, this cactus plant, right? That are actually natural antibiotics.
Oh.
So they actually there's actually. Yes, there are certain things that are resistant to penicillin. And those things that are resistant to penicillin, peyote actually fights.
Oh, interesting.
So it's
That's
actually
crazy.
it's incredibly useful as a medicinal thing as well.
Plus it gets you super high and rock hard.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, not only does it make you rock hard, we're living in, we're coming into the 27th wave of COVID, folks.
Yeah.
And I really want to tell you about a product that I'm really excited about, and it's the first HistoryBoiz medical product that's coming out on the market, and it's called Totes Peyotes, and it hasn't been FDA approved yet, but we think it's going to have a big impact on how we fight COVID going forward.
Also, buy our brain pills.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
well, and that's the thing, is the brain pills are part of Totes Peyotes. We got all kinds of mushrooms in there
We got
and
some
stuff.
HGH for
We got
you.
some HGH. It's gonna get you. Every part of you is gonna be rock hard,
Yeah.
And not just from the rigor mortis that'll eventually set in when you take too much of it.
Yeah.
We're selling PCP.
Yeah, we're
Just straight.
yeah, and it's a performance enhancing.
Yeah, you want to
Product.
fight the cops? Throw a cop car?
Yeah, you won't even notice that you have COVID.
It honestly is a lot thanks to Quanah Parker that they still use peyote to this day, and a lot of Native American tribes and
Got
stuff
the word
to
out.
this day. Yeah, and
I'm telling you, he's a social
cherish-
media influencer.
they
I was going to
cherish.
say
They
he's
cherish
like a merry prankster.
No. Fuck the merry pranksters while we're
What's
at
his
it.
name?
Ken Kesey.
Yeah, Ken
Easy.
Kesey.
Yeah.
Or Timothy Leary.
Yeah. Fuck both of them. Anyway, meanwhile, Colonel Ranald Slidell Mackenzie, he was actually promoted to a general.
Cool.
He went through a lot of stress in his life. He saw a lot of horrific battles in his life.
Every time he closed the eyes, he saw the faces of the men he killed.
And
Yeah.
every time he looked at his hands, he also saw the same horrible war things that were happening when his eyes were closed.
Well, and his war wounds, never truly healed, including mental war wounds. And he grew increasingly paranoid and erratic. People don't really know exactly what was going on with him because of a lack of understanding in mental health. But they eventually sent him to Bloomingdale, a mental asylum in New York. Remember that?
Yeah.
Bloomingdale, the place of the rich people, right? Remember that? From the Blackwell's Asylum episode?
They sent him to Bloomingdale's.
Yeah, he went to Bloomingdale's. He either died there or with his sister out on Staten Island.
He's a regular Pete Davidson.
Yeah, he had a
Who
lot
was
of
also gonna die
mental
there.
issues later on in his life that was sort of his downfall, which is super crazy. I mean, one of they even call him the greatest Indian fighter of all, right?
Yeah.
And he sort of was almost relegated to the footnote of history, in a lot of ways. Fort McKenzie is in Sheridan, Wyoming. It's named after him.
Oh, I thought it was named after our friend Sheridan.
Well, Sheridan, Wyoming's named after him, but Fort McKenzie's,
Well, Sheridan, Wyoming is named after General Sheridan, of course. We mentioned this in the last series.
Right.
Well, damn it.
We have some listeners that are at least one listener that's from near there.
Okay.
From near Sheridan, Wyoming. Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
In 1918, actually, that fort was sort of abandoned. And then later, it was turned into this sort of mental health hospital. 1922. It was taken over by the Bureau of Health, which I think is a great legacy for Colonel Mackenzie, to be a place that takes care of people with mental disorders, right? I just thought that was super interesting.
Yeah.
That it ended up being this place for mental health, even though it probably didn't deal with it right from the 1920s on.
And also was like kind of disconnected from him in physical space.
Right. He didn't live to see any of this.
Yeah. A fun coinky dink.
Yeah, it was expressive. It was expressed, opened for people with mental illness after World War One to deal with those sort of things.
Yeah, it was for people with mental illness by people with mental illness.
Yeah, and dealing with the same sort of war wounds that Mackenzie had. Right. Honestly, if Mackenzie has one good legacy, I suppose it's that.
Shell shock, sticker shock.
Yeah, but Mackenzie was
Toxic
buried
shock.
at the West Point Cemetery. Buried with full honors there. Now, at the age of 66, Quanah Parker, he was actually gored by a bull, and
dear.
he had this blood infection.
That's surprising.
Yeah,
I was expecting old man in his sleep, but gored by a bull.
yeah, he was gored by a bull and got like an infection, and was taking peyote to mitigate this infection. He was actually gored while he was visiting his Parker relatives. Because he got on good terms with them, which is fucking amazing.
Wow.
He's like, why'd you guys train this bull to be so mean?
But it never really went away. On February 23rd, 1911, at Star House, Quanah Parker passed away. His body was interred at the Post Oak Mission Cemetery near Cache, Oklahoma, with his mother and sister, Topsana and Cynthia Ann.
That's a bummer. He was so excited about the Titanic. Just barely missed it.
He's like, it's really going to make it, I'm sure.
Yeah. He's like, it's the biggest boat.
His body was moved in 1957 to the Fort Sill Post Cemetery in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, with his wife, or with his mother and with his sister.
I can't not imagine him being exhumed and moved by a bunch of greasers. Because it's 1957. They're just like, we gotta move this Native American corpse, guys. And they're all just like slicking back their pompadours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rolled up cigarettes in the air. Yeah, they're listening to the Big Bopper.
Yeah, driving like chopped rat rods.
Yeah. Have you heard the Big Bopper? He sings about having sex with 16-year-olds. Rock and roll.
But you can go see it, and honestly, his memorial is actually really impressive looking. It's pretty crazy looking. On the gravestone, it actually says, quote, "Died resting here until day breaks and shadows fall and darkness disappears is Quanah Parker, last chief of the Comanches. Born 1852, died February 23rd, 1911, Post Oak Mission Cemetery, Comanche Country, Oklahoma." Fantastic. And I guess this is sort of a pared down version from the Bible. There's like a Solomonic thing that they did here, which sort of gives him a Haile Selassie connection, that sort of Solomonic thing. Super odd. The way things connect is odd. But he died sort of penniless. He gave away a lot of his money to people who needed it.
Cool.
He gave so much of it away. He made a lot of money during his life and then died penniless. So, yeah, he gave so much of that shit away.
Well, and I wonder if that's just a matter of him looking at what he needs versus what he has.
Yeah.
And based off of his upbringing and what have you,
Can't take it with you.
You can't take it with you.
Yeah.
And also, like, how much do you need?
Yeah, and I think he really understood that. Like, he had a star house, which is sort of all he really ever wanted. After...
Was he paying property tax on it? Maybe
no, that was his, man.
Okay,
outright.
Yeah. Like, the idea of having a house that's paid off and you're just like, I live here.
Yeah, yeah. Other people built it for me, and it was...
You got food, clothes, shelter.
Yeah, and people would come by and camp on his property in teepees and shit.
Yeah,
cool. There were people there all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And, if you needed anything, he would help you,
Yeah.
One biographer of Quanah Parker had this to say about him. Quote, "Not only did Quanah pass within the span of a single lifetime from a Stone Age warrior to a statesman in the age of the Industrial Revolution, but he never lost a battle to the white man, and he also accepted the challenge and responsibility of leading the whole Comanche tribe on the difficult road toward their new existence." End quote. And that perfectly sums up his end life.
Yeah.
That he fought tooth and nail, wrong or right, for his people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And I think a pretty interesting connection that could be drawn between Quanah Parker's story and also the last 5 part that we did is these people who essentially had to create new lives for themselves and transition into a world that was rapidly changing.
Right.
And
it's crazy that, the Wyatt Earp story and all this stuff exists parallel to this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's so different, the two.
Yeah.
And they're in close proximity to each other in the grand scheme of things. And honestly, like Colonel Mackenzie said early on, like, wow, it's crazy that these buffalo hunters are killing all this buffalo. I mean, they're doing more to do my job than I could ever do.
Yeah.
And he even said, like, it makes way for the festive cowboy. That's what he said. We saw what the festive cowboy fucking was, right? Like, the legend of the Old West was already beginning, And, the whole Wild West, like, the reason for the Wild West was all just a direct consequence of the Civil War itself. You know what I mean? And, like, all of this stuff, the way it all panned out, it's just... It defies imagination. You can't write this stuff,
Right.
unless you're God.
Yeah.
Praise him.
And I don't claim to be.
Yeah. And one last thing. Star House has been moved several times since. It actually went to a small amusement park, to be on display there. The amusement park fell into disrepair, and so did the house. It was moved yet again. And to this day, it has private owners. It is in disrepair. People have offered to help fix it up. So far, no one has done it because it would be millions of dollars in renovations.
It does not have working plumbing.
No, it does not. There's like holes and stuff. It's in pretty bad disrepair, and it would take a lot of money to actually fix it. A lot of people have offered, but the thing is it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to do.
I mean, currently in its current state, it is in the Sunnyvale, California area. The property is right around the $4 billion range to own it, and it's a fair price. Yeah. I'm kidding. Little real estate humor there.
There you go.
And with that, dear listener and gentlemen, that is the story of Quanah Parker.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So before we went into this, you had recommended that we watch The Searchers, and I'd been working on some secret projects for the HistoryBoiz, so I didn't have time to get to it. And I'm actually really happy that I went into it kind of sight unseen, because it was I don't know, it's a story that I've never heard. I was really interested in the entire story, and I like kind of how it balances. I mean, we try as hard as we can to balance history in terms of making everybody shitty.
Well, everyone is good and everyone is bad. Like, no one is 100% either way. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I think some people are pretty bad.
Yeah, some people are pretty good. But
It's almost like
history is so nuanced.
Yeah, and it's easy to point out who the villain is until they all of a sudden like suddenly knee-jerk speed become the victim, and then you're like, oh wait, never mind.
Right.
And this is kind of one of those quintessential stories that kind of like encompasses the duality of that.
Yeah, and the meeting of these two vastly different worlds and what that means and how some people navigated it, how Red Cloud navigated it was so much different than the way Quanah did, It's just incredibly interesting, the fact how he was able to walk that line and be that way. It's unexpected. Like, this whole story is unexpected at every turn. Like, you don't really know. Even though it's been a long time, you don't really know what's going to happen if you're reading it for the first time. And that's why I do recommend all of these books. I just want you, as a listener, to know that when you do go and read these books, have a critical mind. And remember that they're trying to sell books too.
Right.
And it's like, okay, remember history is nuanced. Even by novelists and things like this, they're reporting on certain things that they find. And the only reason why they find certain things is because that's what the people that wrote things down said. Yeah. And there's really no other proof otherwise of other things. Yeah. Right. And yeah, I just go in with a critical mind with any book that you read, any nonfiction book that you read. Anyway, that's Quanah Parker, folks.
That was that. We are the History Boys. Thank you so much for listening. I am Christopher Whedon, and still very much in the hole from all that money I shelved into the Skeleton Life pyramid scheme that I can't get out of.
I'm Tyler Ermintrout, and I'm just getting started on my pyramid scheme. It's called Cadaver Experience. It's a completely different thing. It's a new thing, and I really feel like in the history of HistoryBoiz bits, it's going to be just as popular and well regarded as Skeleton Life. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that whole thing's going to turn out. So yeah, that's me.
Cool.
I'm Zach Meck. I am just a history boy.
Nice. And I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy, as always. Thank you so much, dear listener. Without you, we are not the History Boys.
That's right.
And thank you so much to all of our Patreon subscribers. Without them, this show does not continue, which is amazing that people will give us money to continue this show. Pays for the books, pays for our Transistor account, all that stuff. I would also encourage you to follow us on all of these social medias, all of the Twitters or Facebooks, all that stuff. Go find us there. You can interact with us there as well. You can send us an email to historyboyspodcast@gmail.com if you want to talk to me and maybe suggest another episode. And I promise, dear listeners, the people that have suggested episodes, I'm getting to them. It's a lot of work, folks. Yeah. And I'm just trying to make all this happen for you, for your listening pleasure.
Don't forget that we also have the Tyler Ermintrout, or HistoryBoiz Presents, pardon me. Don't forget that we have the HistoryBoiz Presents, the Tyler Ermintrout Project, featuring Chris Whedon. We're going into our third episode in March, coming out probably 1 week after you listen to this episode. You're going to get 12 for the whole year if you're on the $10 Patreon level, and so much more on Patreon. So follow us there. Feel free to hook us up, and you will be repaid in many, many ways.
Yeah. For as little as $1 a month, you can be on our Discord, which is super cool.
$5 a month, you can have a shout out, like our boy Brady.
Yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. Mr. Zach.
Love you, bye.
Without a lot of fun, we'll see you next time. Or I guess we won't, whatever. Whatever.